when thinking about how to drive a successful rollout and adoption, first things come to mind is that it's not an easy task. Many organizations put lots of efforts and resources in building their BI solution, but then when they want to roll it out and to basically start using it as a day-to-day tool in their organization, they don't succeed, and people, all the end users, are not adopting this solution. So today I'm going to give you some tricks and tips on how to do it. Those tricks and tips basically sums up our Sisense experience of account managers and support team of how to do it correctly and to contribute to the adoption of the BI solution in your organization. The main concept of BI solution to us include two basic guidelines. So the first one is that we treat our BI solution, all the dashboards that we produce, as a product. That means that we have a life cycle to manage. That means that we have a planning stage and we have execution step, and we have all the conventional product managing methods that we can apply on the BI solution in order to keep it alive and evolving. The second guideline would be that the delivery of the BI solution is a standalone track in the whole BI implementation workflow. And by that I mean, if you attended some of our past webinars, you're probably familiar with this BI implementation workflow that represents the best practices of Sisense. And what we see here is that the workflow consists of three phases. We have the planning phase, that would include the requirements gathering and the high-level design of the complete BI solution. We have the executing phase, which is building the Elastic Cube and creating the dashboards. This is hands-on phase on our Sisense product. And then we have the delivery phase of releasing and adjusting the solution, releasing, that is, the rollout phase. So by saying that the delivery of a BI solution is a standalone track, that means that we basically meet the BI the delivery thinking. We keep it in mind throughout the whole workflow. We're gonna ask the question regarding the rollout needs here when we gather the requirements in the initial phase of the workflow. We're gonna plan the delivery plan here as a part of the high-level design of the project, and then we're gonna implement the delivery plan when rolling out the dashboards. Following this workflow, we're going to have a webinar discussing those three steps of how to plan, how to roll out, and then how to drive adoption. Let's start with the delivery planning. The delivery planning, when planning the delivery, as you remember, we're doing it in the initial phases of the workflow. We're addressing four essential questions. first one to define the success criteria for a solution. The BI implementation workflow is a project, and as any project, we want to know if we succeed and we have met our goals and our objectives. So to do it, we have to define the success criteria in the initial phases. We know that implementing a BI solution is a teamwork. Many people are involved in such a project, and in order for it to succeed, we want to map the team and define the exact roles and responsibilities. We also want to determine the work processes, the procedures, and the conventions, and we want to think on this very preliminary stage on what would be our release cycle policy, as this policy would affect the way that we plan our dashboards. So in order to do that, and another very important thing before we move on, we have to plan our research throughout the solution lifecycle. And this point is very important because we see many times in many organizations that organizations put all their time, all their efforts, all their resources just in the planning and executing phase, and basically don't give enough thought on how to roll it, and not giving any thought or a little thought to how they're going to keep the solution, how they will react to change requests, how do they train the end users and help them to adopt the solution. So this is a very important note. In order to address these 4 points, we have prepared this kind of template that we believe that will help you in planning your delivery phase. And I want to review this template with you. So let's go to this template. I hope now you can see it better. Okay. So first point was the success criteria. Success criteria for a BI solution is often the usage level. The usage level is the number of users and the frequency of use. That is, if I have 100% of end users who really use it, and how much does the dashboards really affect their day-to-day job and their decision-making processes. So the frequency of use will indicate how deep is the usage. And of course, another strong success criteria would be the end user satisfaction. If you already have some BI infrastructure, you can start from setting a KPI that is related. If not, you will have to take some kind of a pilot period to roll out your solution, to start working, and after, let's say, a month, measure the baseline, and then again after a given period of time for your decision. As you can see, we suggest another 2 success criteria. Time saving is a very strong success criteria, but it is often hard to measure, and ROI is the same, but even harder to measure. Of course, this is something that we encourage you to do, and we will discuss later on this webinar ways to measure this kind of criteria, of success criteria. The second point that we want to take into account when planning a BI solution delivery would be the roles and responsibilities of the BI team. Now, this is again an important note, because in many organizations we see employees who take the BI solution as an extra task. And what we want to say here, that for implementing a BI solution, you really have to think about it, and you really have to build a dedicated team. Now, this team doesn't have to work full-time on your BI solution, unless, of course, there are analysts and this is their main tasks. But we do, however, recommend on gathering up managers and employees to create a dedicated team. This dedicated team should have a sponsor. Often it would be a director or other executive that can lead and push the management towards giving the BI solution resources and mostly managerial attention. You will have the modeler, you will have the designers, and you will have the main viewers, which are your main stakeholders. So what we're saying is that you have to identify all your stakeholders very early along the way in order to plan the delivery. Okay? So the delivery already starts by pointing out exactly who are your main stakeholders and what would be their needs. Let's move on to the third point of building the work processes, the procedures and conventions. By that we mean you have to think how to operate this team. There are two main approaches of how to build your design team. It could be either centralized or decentralized. Saying this, centralized approach will say that you have one team. It can be more than one designer, but all of the designers belong to one business unit or one function within the organization. And the job and the main tasks of this team would be to build dashboards across the organization. Another approach would be decentralized. That means that you have an ambassador, you have a function in each business unit that is related to your BI team, and basically gather the requirements from its business unit and build the dashboards for this unit. The mode of operation approach is very important because it affects on how you will manage and how you will be able to collect your needs and then roll it out. For example, if you have a centralized team to develop your BI solution, then you will have to create work processes and routines where you meet your end users and collect needs in very specific and well-defined points during the year. On the other hand, if you have decentralized team that lives as an organic part of its business unit, then he can collect the information, collect the requirements in a, let's say, unofficial way, just by attending team meetings, and basically to live the day-to-day life of the business unit. This is also affect the way that you should work with the Elastic Cube. If you have one centralized team, then it will be easier to coordinate and to create conventions of how to use the Elastic Cube, or how to create dashboard templates. But if you have decentralized mode of operation, then you will have to train your designers and to create some kind of designers forum to align on all these work processes and conventions. Another 2 points would be the backlog prioritization technique, and we will discuss this later on this webinar. And the last point would be the release cycle frequency. As a product, you may like to release your BI solution in a product-like approach that is setting major releases and minor releases. You can say that a major release will take place once a month, while minor releases can be on a weekly basis or ad hoc basis, and this will help you to determine the required resources for your BI solution. So up to here, up to planning and starting to think about the delivery. If you have any questions now, it will be a good time to post them in the question box. As I move on to the rollout part. Okay. Okay. So, the rollout part is just releasing the first dashboard that you've created for your users. Thinking about the rollout, we distinguish between two separate tracks. The one would be the technical track, and the second would be the more soft track, the organizational engagement track. I don't want to get into much details regarding the technical part, but I do want to comment 3 points. In general, the most important, the core of the technical track would be moving between environments. That is, moving between the staging environment to the production staging or QA, or the development environment to the production environment. This is a pretty complex process, and looking at some of our customers' experience while trying to do it, we would like to send the message that this has to be a very well-defined, cautiously defined process. This process depends on the customer unique system structure. Okay, so we don't have thumb rules that fits all, but we can say this is something that you have to carefully plan and put resources in. Two main components of the plan would be defining a clear purpose for each environment. We see rollout processes that fails because of the mix-up between the purposes of the environments and because of not keeping the version of the product aligned. Of course, it would be best if you have the same version installed in all your environments, but if you don't have, you have to keep in mind the differences between the versions and to take it into account while building the dashboards and moving them from environment to environment. So that was quick three comments, and let's proceed to the organizational engagement track. Now, in this track, I would like to touch four subjects, 4 success keys of making the organization accepting the BI solution and using it. So the first one would be involve your users from very early stages. Of course, you involve all the stakeholders from very early stage when you interact with them and when you gather your business requirements for them. But when you address an audience of operational dashboards that can be business users, then we recommend to perform UAT. This is the user acceptance tests, just to give the users, the end users, a sample of the end users to use the dashboard and give you feedback and comments. Did it meet the predefined purposes? Was it easy to use? Was it the UX was clear enough for use, and so on. And of course, you have to get a sign-off from the sponsor of the project. Another thing would be to onboard your users and introduce them your BI solution, and I will deep down to this point in the next slide. Another thing will be to have a help desk available for your end users in the first 1 or 2 weeks after releasing your first dashboard. That will be useful for end users who encounter issues in connecting to Sisense, in understanding what exactly do they see, help to solve minor issues of data security or privileges. So this is very helpful. And the last point would be posting the documentation. So that means not the technical documentation of how to use Sisense, how to use your technical tool, rather than records of all the business logic, the dashboard's objectives, the rationale that dictate the layout and customization. Okay, you would want to explain your user why did you pick the relevant KPIs? What was the formulas that you used to express these KPIs? What was the data source? Okay, so we would like to give them as much information to be available, and they can choose if they want to use it or not. And another The reason this is important for you to have as the BI leaders in your organization is just for record purposes. That is, if you have a new BI team member or someone is leaving and someone else comes to replace him, then you have all of your business wisdom, all the BI wisdom documented in your documentation, of course. So now let's deep dive into the onboarding activities that you can offer to your end users. And again, if you have any questions or comments or ideas that you would like to share with the rest of the attendees here at this webinar, you're welcome to type them down into the question box. So to me, this is the fun part. This is the place where you basically show and present the organization the product that you've created from scratch, showing all the picking the fruits of your labor. And I would like to suggest 3 complementary components that together will help you to introduce your solution to your end users. The first one would be to introduce it in various ways. The most easy way, and we hear from customers that it is very effective, is just to include an executive summary with your first email. This executive summary should include the highlights of the dashboards that you just share with your end users. It can be the highlights of KPIs or the most surprising results that you've got. This can be the reason that you chose to measure these KPIs. We also suggest to have some kind of gradual increase in the complexity of the dashboards that you post. For example, you can start and publish the first dashboard with only 3 or 4 widgets, relatively simple widgets, and along time to add more widgets and to increase the complexity level. This will help to build right habits with your end users and to let them get used to the new tool that you're trying to implement in your organization. And another way of doing it is to give your end users the opportunity to interact with the data, to explore, to filter, to drill into the data. For this, you would like to give them live dashboards and not just PDF files or any flat file. This kind of interactive experience is usually increase the involvement level of the end users. Another way to complete this written dashboard executive summary would be to go and have a roadshow across the organization, and that could be a personal roadshow or a recorded remote roadshow. But what we want to accomplish by this roadshow would be to present the solution to the stakeholders. Again, if you're talking about a senior executive and you would like to, which is a main stakeholder, you will probably want to do it personally just to come into meeting to close the circle, and as you if in the initial steps of the workflow you ask him what are the main business needs that you want to address by the BI solution, now it's your opportunity to come and to close the circle and just give him the end result. When talking about a mass group of end users, again, usually for operational dashboard, then you can join to a team meeting and you can introduce. Again, you would not only want to introduce the technical how-tos, okay, how to select data from your dashboard and how to drill down. You would like to explain the KPIs. You would like to explain the formulas and exactly how you measure each KPI. You would like to say a thing or two about the layout of the dashboard, and so on. You can again say it face to face, but you can also record this kind of explanation and just attach it to the email that you sent to your end users. And if you're taking part virtually or live with your in a team meeting, then you might consider playing a game with a dashboard. So incorporating gamification in the onboarding process for your end users, it is something that we discovered that many of our clients are doing. And here I have 3 examples of games or quizzes. Unfortunately, I can't demonstrate any of them as they are confidential materials of our clients, but I will tell you about them. And again, if you have similar examples from your organization, you are most welcome to write it in the question box, and I will share it with the rest of the attendees here. So we have, first of all, we have the dashboard quiz. This is kind of dashboard Jeopardy. This kind of game is basically asking a question, asking the group, asking the team a question that an answer could only be available if they're using the dashboard. Okay, so if you ask what was the overall revenue of a specific product in a specific year in a specific region, then only by drilling down and filtering the dashboard they can find out what is the right question. If you're doing it live, you can divide the team into 2 and have a short contest. Then you really help your end users to exercise and to practice of how you use the system technically, and to get them familiar with the data within your dashboard. Another idea would be to conduct a Build an Awesome Dashboard contest. We know about one organization that has a decentralized approach for his BI team, and he basically conducted a contest between all the designers of who is going to create the most aesthetic and awesome dashboard using various visualizations, using some cool plugins. That was very successful and really increased the adoption of the BI solution within this specific organization. And a third example would be building some kind of a dashboard quest. This is a board game in which you can progress in steps only if you answer answer a question correctly, or if you're performing and demonstrating some kind of an action to the rest of the team. Let's say if you show how to drill into a year to get month's resolution, then you can proceed to the next step. So these are all interesting and pretty cool, I think, ideas of how you can onboard your end users. And this one brings us up to the next point of how to drive adoption. When you already rolled out your BI solution and you already and all your end users have begun to use the dashboards, now you want to keep them alive. Now you want to improve them. Now you want the end users to adopt them and to increase the frequency of use. And when thinking about adoption, you would like to address 3 points. The first will be to get continuous user feedback, just to know if the solution that you provided to the end user is effective. Does it meet the requirements that you initially defined? You would like to create a backlog and then manage it. And you will, you may want to proceed with your training and PR efforts to push this solution even further. I see that we have, our time is running short, and I want to leave some room for questions. So I do want to focus on the user's feedback. And this is a feedback questionnaire, some suggested questions that we've created for you. And again, I want to review this document. So let's enlarge it. Okay. So our questionnaire is basically a list of questions, and you can apply this question in different techniques. It can be that the question can be asked as part of a structured interview. You can translate those questions into an automated questionnaire. You can ask this question in a focus group. So you can take those examples and just adjust it to the medium that you're going to use with your end users. This is, of course, depends on the who are you going to talk to. Is it the main stakeholder or just business users? If they're close, if they're spread geographically, I guess you know this. What are the considerations? And what do we ask? First of all, we want to get the numbers. Okay, so we will ask questions to indicate the usage pattern, such as how many dashboards are available to you, and out of them, how many are being used, in what frequency, and which dashboards exactly are they. And then you would like to get into the root causes of why people use these dashboards or not use them. And this is an interesting point, because if you get a low satisfaction, if your findings indicate low satisfaction, then you have lots of points to improve in your BI solution. If you get high satisfaction, then you would like to duplicate or reproduce this success in other business units of your organization. And basically, whether if your users are satisfied or if they're not satisfied, you will be able to take this input and work with it to improve your BI solution. And what we're going to ask here would be questions about the impact of the BI solution on the performance of your end users. Okay, so questions like how the dashboard impact your day-to-day and how it affects your performances. If you're having face-to-face interview, then you can ask for an example, some kind of a success story using the dashboards. You can go back to the initial requirements and ask the stakeholder, does the dashboard really meets the business needs that were initially defined? You can find out what would they do if they don't have your BI solution. Sometimes this is a very important point, because in some cases, if you don't have a dashboard, then you don't measure these KPIs. It's hard to track, and then you have a value of your BI solution just by just from its existence. Other questions will regard to improvement should be made in the dashboards in terms of KPIs, in case of business requirements, and in terms of user experience. Is the dashboard clear? Is the layout make sense? Is it too busy, or maybe it's not useful? Maybe the data is not timely enough, and so on. So, as you can see, you have here a few questions that can be a base for your interviews. Let's go back to our presentation, just to repeat to one last point of the ongoing training and PR. Just to say that for PR, you will probably want to share the success stories. So if you get high satisfaction, you will probably want to get your stakeholders to tell about it and to spread the word in the organization. You would like to present the various dashboards and to introduce the BI solution to potential new users. And of course, as much as you create the buzz, then you can expect to have more buyers for your BI product. So just before ending this session, if you have any more questions, now it will be a good time to ask them or to make any comments or remarks. I hope this webinar was useful for you and that you got some nice ideas of how you can drive a successful rollout and adoption. And I hope to see you on our next webinars. Thank you very much and have a good day. The recording with all the materials will be sent to you. Goodbye.